Welcome to Chapter 5, where we explore contemporary grand theories. Unlike the classical theorists we've studied in previous chapters, contemporary theorists have continued to offer grand perspective on human history and social development. This chapter presents an overview of some of the most important contemporary grand theories that build upon and extend classical sociological thought. Before we dive into the content, let's establish our learning objectives for this chapter. By the end of our discussion, you should be able to analyze how critical theory explains cultural control, understanding how the culture industry operates different from traditional economic control. You'll be able to compare Fordism and post-Fordism, seeing how production and consumption patterns have changed. You'll understand Elias's civilizing process and how lengthening dependency chains shape behavior. You'll be able to evaluate Habermas' concerns about system colonization of the life world. You'll assess Giddens' juggernaut metaphor for understanding modern risk and apply Ritzer's McDonaldization concept to various social institutions. Finally, you'll synthesize how all these theories help us understand contemporary globalization and social change. These are practical analytical tools you can use to understand the world around you. Today we'll examine several major contemporary grand theories. We'll start with neo-Marxian theories, particularly critical theories focused on the culture industry. Then we'll explore the transition from Fordism to post-Fordism, Norbert Elias's civilizing process, Habermas' theory of life world colonization, Giddens' concept of modernity as a juggernaut, and finally Ritzer's McDonaldization thesis. Each of these theories offers a sweeping view of social change and development. Critical theory emerged from the Frankfurt School, founded in 1923. Unlike traditional Marxists, who focused on economic control, critical theorists argued that by the mid-20th century, culture had become the primary means of social control. They saw the rise of mass culture, radio, movies, and television, as creating a kind of opiate of the masses that was more effective than economic coercion. This culture industry, they argued, made people passive consumers rather than active revolutionaries, fundamentally changing the nature of capitalist control. The culture industry operates through several mechanisms. Mass media dominates people's free time. Thinking about how much time people spend watching TV or consuming entertainment. Shopping has become a primary leisure activity, absorbing both time and energy. The industry produces standardized products that create standardized consumers. Most importantly, this control is pleasant. People enjoy their entertainment and shopping, making them less likely to rebel. As the text notes, people are too anesthetized by the mass media, too busy shopping and working to afford what they buy when they shop, to think very much about revolution. Herbert Marcuse, a key critical theorist, argued that technology was creating what he called one-dimensional society. In this society, people lose their ability to think critically about their situation because they become focused only on technical efficiency, what he called technocratic thinking. Rather than asking whether something is right or just, people only ask whether it's efficient. This diminishes individual creativity and freedom. Marcuse argued that while technology could potentially liberate humanity, under capitalism it serves to control and exploit workers rather than enhance human potential. Fordism, named after Henry Ford, dominated much of the 20th century. It was characterized by mass production of essentially identical products. Ford famously said customers could have the Model T in any color as long as it was black. The system relied on assembly line technology and standardized work routines, and created relatively homogeneous products and consumption patterns. It also led to powerful bureaucratic labor unions and focused on continually increasing productivity. However, the system began to decline in the 1970s due to various factors, including the oil crisis and competition from Japanese automakers. Post-Fordism represents a significant shift towards specialization and flexibility. Instead of mass-producing identical items, companies now create highly specialized products for different markets. Production systems are more flexible, able to quickly switch between different products. Workers need multiple skills rather than repeating one simple task. Large unions have declined as work has become more individualized. Consumption has become much more heterogeneous. The text uses sneakerization as an example, noting how there are now hundreds of different types of sneakers for different activities and styles. However, we should be cautious about fully accepting this transition. Many elements of Fordism persist, especially in service industries like fast food. Immanuel Wallerstein developed world system theory as an alternative to traditional Marxist class analysis. Instead of focusing on individual nations or classes, he looks at a broad economic entity, the world system. This system has a core that dominates and exploits the rest, a periphery that provides raw materials and is heavily exploited, and a semi-periphery that falls somewhere between the two. Importantly, Wallerstein argues that the intentional division of exploitation is defined by economic rather than political boundaries. It's all about the division of labor in the world economy, not traditional state borders. Norbert Elias studied what he called the civilizing process, a long-term historical change in Western manners and behavior. His research, based on etiquette books from the 13th to the 19th centuries, showed how behaviors that were once perfectly acceptable gradually became embarrassing or offensive. For example, in the 13th century, people commonly gnawed on bones at the table and put them back in serving dishes, but this behavior gradually became unacceptable. Elias connected these changes to what he called dependency chains. As social relationships became more complex and interdependent, people had to be more sensitive to others' reactions and control their behavior accordingly. Elias provides fascinating examples of how behavior changed over time. We just mentioned in the 13th century, people thought nothing of gnawing on animal bones at the dinner table. By the 14th century, advice books were warning against picking one's noses while eating. In the 15th century, we saw elaborate rules about how to properly blow one's nose. Marriage customs also changed dramatically. What was once a public ceremony, where the bride and groom had to consummate their marriage in front of witnesses, became a private affair. Even our tolerance for violence has decreased. Behaviors that were once acceptable in public are now hidden from view or eliminated entirely. Elias' concept of dependency chains helps explain why the civilizing process occurred. In early societies with short dependency chains, people could engage in violent or crude behavior because it affected relatively few others. But as the societies became more complex, particularly with the development of court society, people became dependent on larger numbers of others. In these longer chains, violence or offensive behavior could disrupt entire networks of relationships. People had to learn to anticipate others' reactions and control their impulses. The king's court became a model for this kind of complex, interdependent social system, where behavioral control was essential. Elias introduced the concept of figurations to overcome the traditional distinction between individual and society. Figurations are social processes involving the interweaving of people. They're the patterns of relationships and interdependence that emerge when people interact. Unlike traditional structural approaches, Elias saw figurations not as external structures that constrain individuals, but as the actual relationships between people. Power is central to figurations, but it's constantly shifting and changing. This concept applies at all levels, from small groups to entire societies like China with over 1 billion people. Jürgen Habermas, another Frankfurt School theorist, distinguished between the life world and the system. The life world is where everyday communication takes place. It's the realm of intersubjective relationships and mutual understanding. The system consists of formal structures like the family, legal system, state, and economy that develop their own distinctive logic over time. Habermas' concern is that the system increasingly colonizes or takes over the life world, limiting people's ability to engage in free and open communication. This colonization restricts the possibility for rational discussion and consensus building that Habermas sees as essential for human flourishing. Habermas provides concrete examples of how system colonization works. Legal systems create rules that prevent certain types of communication, like insider trading laws that prohibit sharing information about stock investments. Economic pressures mean people have less time for thoughtful discussion and reflection. Bureaucratic rules constrain how people can interact in formal settings. The result is that communication becomes increasingly rigid, impoverished, and fragmented. Instead of the free and open communication that could lead to mutual understanding and consensus, people find themselves constrained by systemic requirements that prioritize efficiency over genuine dialogue. Anthony Giddens uses the metaphor of a juggernaut to describe modernity. Like a massive trailer truck careening down a busy street, modernity is a powerful force that moves forward inexorably. It can bring tremendous benefits, new medical treatments, technological advances that improve life, but it also carries great dangers, including nuclear weapons, environmental destruction, and genetic manipulation. The key insight is that while people can influence the directive of the juggernaut, they can never completely control it. There's always the possibility that it could careen out of control, threatening everyone in its path. Giddens identifies distanciation as a key challenge of modernity. Unlike pre-modern societies, where threats were usually local and immediate, modern dangers spread across vast distances in space and time. A nuclear submarine can launch missiles that destroy targets half a world away. Environmental problems created in one location affect people thousands of miles away and can persist for generations. This creates a fundamental challenge for modern life. We must trust systems and experts we cannot directly observe or control. We have to trust the nuclear submarine commanders will not launch attacks, that genetic researchers will take proper precautions, and that environmental regulations will be enforced. Giddens argues that people in modern societies must be highly reflexive, constantly re examining and reforming their actions and beliefs based on new information. We live in what he calls high modernity, facing risks that previous generations never encountered. We must trust the experts while remaining painfully aware that they can make mistakes. This creates what he calls a risk society, where global interconnected dangers require us to trust systems we cannot fully understand or control. Paradoxically, the very actions we take to solve problems can create new risks we had not anticipated. Giddens identifies four main reasons why the juggernaut of modernity can rush out of control. First, there are design faults. The people who create systems like nuclear reactors make mistakes that can lead to disasters like Chernobyl. Second, there's operator failure. Even well-designed systems can fail due to human error. Third, we cannot always foresee the consequences of new knowledge or technology. Genetic research might lead to beneficial treatments, but it could also create unforeseen problems. Finally, the very reflexivity of modern society means that people are constantly applying new knowledge and making changes, which makes outcomes increasingly unpredictable and potentially dangerous. Ritzer's McDonaldization thesis argues that the principles of fast food restaurants are spreading throughout society. He identifies four key dimensions. Efficiency means finding the best possible means to achieve any goal. Fast food restaurants perfect this with drive-through windows and assembly line food preparation. Calculability emphasizes quantity over quality. Bigger is better. Faster is better. Predictability ensures that the same products and experiences are essentially the same regardless of location or time. Finally, control is achieved through technology that dominates both employees and customers, from French fry machines that prevent overcooking to restaurant layouts that encourage quick turnover. McDonaldization extends far beyond fast food. In higher education, we see standardized curricula and emphasis on measurable outcomes like graduation rates rather than learning quality. Healthcare increasingly resembles an assembly line with predetermined treatment protocols and emphasis on throughout. Retail giants like Walmart exemplify efficiency and predictability. Entertainment becomes increasingly standardized, with blockbuster movies and theme parks offering predictable experiences. Perhaps most significantly, McDonaldization has gone global. McDonald's operates in over 115 countries, spreading these principles worldwide. Ritzer emphasizes what he calls the irrationality of rationality, the negative consequences that flow from McDonaldization. Workers and customers are increasingly treated as objects to be processed efficiently rather than as human beings. The focus on speed and quantity often reduces quality. Fast food may be efficient, but it is not necessarily good food. Homogenization means that we lose diversity and creativity as everything becomes standardized. There are environmental costs as the emphasis on efficiency creates waste and pollution. Perhaps most importantly, we lose genuine human connection as standardized scripts and procedures replace authentic human interaction. This chapter concludes by examining globalization as a key feature of contemporary society. Globalization refers to processes that affect multiple nations, but operate independently of any specific nation state. Examples include global financial markets that operate 24/7 across time zones, mass migration patterns, and cultural exchanges. There's an ongoing tension between homogenization, the spread of standardized practices like McDonaldization, and heterogenization as local cultures adapt global influences to their own context. This creates what some theorists call glocalization, global processes that take on the local characteristics, like McDonald's adapting its menu to local taste in different countries. As we conclude, let's identify the key takeaways from contemporary grand theories. First, culture has become as important as economics and understanding social control. The Frankfurt School's insights about the culture industry remain highly relevant. Second, technology creates both tremendous opportunities and unprecedented risk, as Giddens' juggernaut metaphor illustrates. Third, globalization spreads standardized practices like McDonaldization while simultaneously creating new forms of diversity and local adaptation. Fourth, reflexivity, the ability to constantly re-examine our assumptions and practices, is essential for navigating modern complexity. Finally, systems increasingly colonize everyday life, as Habermas warns. These theories provide powerful tools for understanding the large-scale social changes that characterize our contemporary world. I'd like to conclude with some questions for reflection and discussion. Think about how the culture industry operates in your life. How much time do you spend consuming entertainment versus engaging in critical thinking about social issues? What examples of McDonaldization do you see in your daily experience? And how do they affect the quality of your interactions? How do you personally navigate the risk and benefits of modern technology? In what ways do you see globalization affecting your local community, both positively and negatively? Finally, and most importantly, how can we maintain authentic human relationships and genuine communication in an increasing systematized and rationalized world? These are the challenges that contemporary grand theorists help us understand and address.